Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. It being the last week of the month, it's a Magonomia episode. Today we'll discuss how pistols work in Elizabethan England. As part of our ongoing look at spy gear for the Elizabethan period, let's talk guns. Pistols aren't great at the start of the reign. The problem isn't range or accuracy, both of which are bad, but they still trump swords and daggers in close combat, so that gives them a use case. The problem is their trigger mechanism. Early pistols are matchlocks, so time for some engineering. A matchlock pistol has a trigger which, when pulled, lowers a twisted metal piece called a serpentine toward a small pan, which contains gunpowder. A flame on the end of the serpentine ignites the powder in the pan. The flame goes through a small hole in the end of the pan into the barrel, and this ignites the powder within it, which forces the ball explosively forward. So there are many problems here. The first is, how do I light the flame at the end of my serpentine? The method that has evolved is to clamp a piece of slow-burning, chemical-permeated rope, which is referred to as match, at the serpentine's end. Slow match burns at about a foot an hour. So if you have plenty of match and some warning, you can ready your gun in advance. That being said, permanent readiness is expensive. A sentry can go through a mile of match a year. Some people who don't want to be caught suddenly in a firefight keep a case with a piece of slow match in it, so they can use it to light the one that they've already clamped to the top of their pistol. Coachmen, for example, do this. This arrangement is less useful for covert action than it initially appears. The ember at the end of the match is very visible at night. Also, slow match causes smoke and has a distinctive smell. Later, the pirate Blackbeard used to tie bits of burning match to himself before battle to appear infernal. A related problem is that the powder in the pan is exposed, so it can fall out if the gun's jostled, and if the weather is wet or even humid, it can fail to light. As a spy, it's all very well to have a gun in a slow match case, but being smoky, smelly, and having to keep your gun upright or load it before shooting someone is all kinds of impractical. The spell Spark of Magic, in the core rules, page 230, gets around the lighting problem because it gives you an intelligent fire sprite nearby. In the spell you have to keep it in a clay container, and personally I build that into the handle of the gun or the stock of a rifle. It also lets you play merry heck with many of the following types of guns. The rule set causes misfires. There is some question as to whether the creature can lift the pan covers on guns, but let's assume it can. The problem of causing misfires isn't that people miss their shot, it's that the shot may well go into their leg or their horse's shoulder. A slightly stronger spike could make sure of that by tilting the barrel, but we currently have no spell for that, I believe. Enter the wheel lock, and all this changes. The wheel lock appears roughly in 1500, so it's well known in the reign. That being said, wheel locks cost double what a matchlock does, and they're fragile, so they aren't used in military campaigns except as cavalry or officer sidearms. They are used in some famous assassinations, though, and there are some early court cases where people shoot their victims by accident because they think the gun's safe since there's no burning match. When you pull a trigger on a wheel lock, a hardened steel wheel on a spring begins to spin within the pan. The pan has a cover which is retracted by the trigger mechanism. The serpentine, which has a chunk of pyrite on the end, falls onto the wheel and sprays sparks downward onto the pan. You can, in short, have a pocket full of death. You don't smoke, smell, or need to fear the rain. Reloading requires a weird sort of spanner to wind the spring on the wheel, but if you're an assassin you want to get one shot with surprise anyway, and it's still as loud as a matchlock. You can carry more than one if you want. One odd feature is that when you hold a wheel lock, it works slightly better if you tilt it off vertical, so you can look like people in modern films. Not all the way over, though. This is because the sparks off the wheel are gravity fed into the pan, and if the sparks fall to the side of the wheel, rather than at the foot of the wheel, they hit more powder, so you've got a better chance of a fire. The fix for the problems of the wheel lock, the snap lock, appears early in the reign, roughly 1540. Basically, the snap lock has a serpentine replaced with a different shaped bit of metal called a cock, and it's tipped with a piece of flint. The trigger releases a spring that moves the cock forward, pushing the flint along a bit of curved steel, which sprays sparks downwards into the pan. You don't need to pull out a sort of Renaissance Allen key to reload. It costs about 50% more than a matchlock, which is substantially less than a wheel lock. Most have little manual pan covers, so you can shove them down your pants to swing on ropes, pirate style, and they probably won't either go off or spill their powder, but the pan does not automatically retract. That occurs in the next iteration, the snap hands, which is popular after 1560. True flintlocks appear after the rain in about 1610, and their main feature is that the striking steel and the pan cap are a single piece of metal. That being said, people in the period ignored these distinctions and tended to name everything that used a flint the same thing. For example, the Spanish called them rake locks, regardless of the actual action. Late in the reign, there's another intermediate form, which we now call the micalet, but it didn't have a distinctive name in period. It's mostly found in Spain and Italy, and in English it's called a Mediterranean lock for a while. Its presence in somewhere like London is innately suspicious. Your saga may vary.